In just 27 seconds, one of Britain's most beloved actors completely lost his composure, unleashing a verbal assault that left the host speechless and the studio in absolute chaos. What started as lighthearted morning television transformed into a brutal confrontation that exposed ugly truths, shattered reputations, and ended with Colin Firth storming off set while cameras continued rolling. Before we dive into this explosive breakdown, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations they don't want you to see, and the moments that reveal who these celebrities really are behind their carefully crafted images. The morning began like any other on the popular daytime show. Colin Firth arrived at the studio to discuss his latest film project, a period drama generating significant awards buzz. The actor, known for his gentlemanly demeanor and measured responses, settled into the guest chair with his characteristic calm smile. Lorraine, dressed in a bright yellow blazer, greeted him with her trademark Scottish warmth. The studio audience applauded politely as the segment began, completely unaware of the explosion that was about to unfold. "Colin, lovely to have you here," Lorraine began, her voice dripping with enthusiasm. "Now, I've been dying to talk to you about this new film. It looks absolutely stunning from the trailers we've seen." Firth nodded politely, settling into his seat. "Thank you, Lorraine. We're very proud of it. The entire cast and crew poured their hearts into this project over the course of 18 months. It was a genuine labor of love for everyone involved." "I bet they did," Lorraine said, leaning forward conspiratorially, her eyes gleaming with something that wasn't quite journalistic curiosity. "But before we get into all that serious stuff about the film and the acting and all that, I have to ask you something that everyone's been wondering about. Something that's been all over social media." The actor's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of caution crossing his face. He'd done enough interviews to know when a host was about to veer off script. "Oh? What's that?" Lorraine giggled, a sound that immediately set an uncomfortable tone in the studio. Some of the audience members exchanged glances. "Well, there's been all this talk on social media about you and your co-star Emma. The chemistry in those behind-the-scenes photos is absolutely electric. I mean, we've all seen them. The way you two are looking at each other in some of those shots. Come on, you can tell us. Is there something going on there? Something more than just acting?" Firth's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His media training kicked in immediately. Lorraine, Emma, is a consummate professional and a brilliant actress. We developed a strong working relationship built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to the story we were telling. Nothing more than that. "Oh, don't be so modest," Lorraine pressed, waving her hand dismissively as if she were brushing away his very reasonable boundary. "We've all seen the photos, Colin. The way you two look at each other. The body language. You can't fake that kind of connection, surely. Your wife must be at least a little bit jealous when she sees those pictures, surely." "I know I would be if I were married to you and saw those photos. My personal life and my wife are not topics I discuss publicly," Firth replied, his tone noticeably cooler now. A slight edge had entered his voice. "And I'd appreciate if we could focus on the actual work, the film itself, the story we're trying to tell. That's what I'm here to discuss." But Lorraine wasn't backing down. In fact, she seemed to interpret his discomfort as encouragement to push harder. She shuffled through her notes with exaggerated movements, making a show of finding a particular item. Right. The work. Of course, the work is important. Although, speaking of your wife, there was that incident last year at the charity gala. You remember the one, where she looked absolutely miserable in all the photographs. I mean, we've all seen those pictures too. She looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Trouble in paradise? Is that why you and Emma seem so close? The studio suddenly felt several degrees colder. The energy had shifted from awkward to actively hostile. Firth's posture straightened, and his eyes narrowed dangerously. "Excuse me? I'm just saying what everyone was thinking," Lorraine continued breezily, seemingly oblivious to the danger she was courting or perhaps deliberately ignoring it for the sake of creating drama. She didn't look happy at all at that event. Anyone with eyes could see it. And now, with these photos of you and Emma looking so cozy together on set, well, people are going to talk, aren't they? People are going to put two and two together. I'm just asking the questions that our viewers want answered." "Lorraine," Firth said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register that made several crew members take notice. "I came here to discuss my film, not to have my marriage dissected and analyzed on morning television, like it's some kind of soap opera plot." "But Colin, you're a public figure," Lorraine countered, her smile never wavering even as the temperature in the room continued to drop. "People are interested in your life. They're interested in your relationships. That's just part of the job, isn't it? You can't have the fame and the fortune and the Oscar nominations without accepting that people want to know about your personal life. That's the deal, isn't it?" "No, actually, it isn't," Firth shot back, his voice rising slightly. "My job is acting. My job is bringing characters to life on screen. My job is telling stories that move people, that make them think, that make them feel something. My job is not providing fodder for tabloid speculation on breakfast television. There's a difference between being a public figure and being public property." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the light entertainment they'd expected when they'd arrived at the studio that morning. This was something else entirely. Something darker and more real. Lorraine, however, seemed energized by the tension, actually leaning even further forward in her chair as if she could smell blood in the water. "Well, someone's a bit touchy this morning," she said with a laugh that sounded increasingly forced. "I'm only having a bit of fun, Colin. Surely you can take a joke. We're all friends here, aren't we? Just having a friendly chat." "A joke?" Firth repeated incredulously, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You're making insinuations about my marriage and my professional relationships. You're suggesting I'm having an affair, and you're calling it a joke? How exactly is that funny, Lorraine?" "Oh, come on, don't be so serious," Lorraine said, rolling her eyes theatrically for the cameras. "This is exactly why people find actors so pretentious. You lot can't take a little friendly banter. Everything has to be so serious and meaningful. Can't you just lighten up a bit?" The word pretentious hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Firth's expression transformed from irritation to something much darker, much more dangerous. "Pretentious," he said, slowly, carefully, each syllable weighted with barely contained fury. "That's rich coming from someone who's built an entire career on superficial celebrity gossip and manufactured warmth. You sit here every morning, pretending to care about your guests, pretending to be interested in their lives, but really you're just mining them for sound bites and scandal." Lorraine's smile finally faltered, cracks appearing in her cheerful facade. "Now, hold on just a minute." "No, you hold on," Firth interrupted, his voice rising sharply enough to make the camera operators jump. "You invite guests onto your show under the pretense of discussing their work, and then you ambush them with invasive personal questions and tabloid rumors. You act like you're having a friendly chat, but really, you're conducting an interrogation. That's not journalism, Lorraine. That's not even entertainment. It's exploitation, pure and simple." "I think you're being a bit dramatic," Lorraine said, trying desperately to regain her composure, but there was an edge to her voice now, a brittleness that hadn't been there before. Her Scottish accent was thickening with stress. "Dramatic? You just spent the first 5 minutes of this interview making baseless accusations about my personal life. You've disrespected my wife, my colleague, and my profession. You've treated my marriage like it's nothing more than gossip column material. And when I objected, when I tried to set a completely reasonable boundary, you dismissed it as being touchy and pretentious. Tell me, Lorraine, what part of that is acceptable television? What part of that is okay?" The studio crew exchanged nervous glances. The floor manager was making frantic signals, but nobody seemed sure whether they should cut to commercial or keep rolling. The cameras kept recording, capturing every moment of the escalating conflict, every flash of anger, every uncomfortable silence. Lorraine's face had turned a shade of red that almost matched her lipstick. "I was simply trying to have a conversation that people might actually find interesting," she snapped, her carefully constructed persona crumbling. "Not everyone wants to hear actors drone on and on about their craft and their process and all that artsy nonsense. People want to know about the real you, Colin. They want to know what's actually going on in your life." "The real me?" Firth laughed bitterly, a harsh sound that echoed through the studio. "You don't give a damn about the real me, Lorraine. You don't care about who I am as a person. You care about ratings, You care about creating viral moments that will get shared on social media. You care about generating headlines that will get people talking about your show. Well, congratulations. I suspect you'll get exactly what you were hoping for. This will probably be all over Twitter within the hour. You know what? Lorraine said, her voice shaking slightly, anger bleeding through every word. Maybe I was wrong about you. I thought you were one of the good ones. Down to earth. Real. Approachable. But you're just like all the rest of them, aren't you? Self-important and completely disconnected from normal people. Too good for the questions that ordinary viewers want answered. Disconnected from normal people? Firth's voice rose sharply, anger and disbelief mixing in equal measure. Is that what you tell yourself? That you're somehow representing normal people when you pry into the private lives of your guests? When you treat people's marriages and relationships like they're nothing more than entertainment? Like they're soap opera plots for your viewers to speculate about over their morning coffee? It's my job, Lorraine shouted back, her professionalism completely evaporated now. My job is to ask the questions that viewers want answered. My job is to give people what they want to see. No, your job is to provide a platform for people to share their work, their passions, their stories. Firth countered forcefully, his voice filling the studio. But instead, you've turned this show into a circus where you're the wrangle master, cracking your whip and making your guests perform for the audience. You want them to dance when you say dance, to share intimate details when you demand them, to play along with whatever narrative you've constructed. Well, I'm not a performing seal, Lorraine. I'm a human being. Then maybe you should leave, Lorraine shot back, standing up from her chair abruptly, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. Maybe I should, Firth agreed coldly, also rising to his feet. There was a moment of stunned silence. Neither seemed to have expected the conversation to reach this breaking point so quickly. The studio audience sat frozen, some with their hands over their mouths, unsure whether they should applaud, gasp, or simply remain silent. A few people were filming on their phones, already imagining the views their footage would get. Lorraine recovered first, but her recovery was messy and desperate. Fine. If that's how you feel, then perhaps it would be best if you did leave. We don't need guests who can't handle a simple conversation. We don't need people who are too fragile to answer a few straightforward questions. A simple conversation? Firth's voice was dangerously quiet now, the kind of quiet that was somehow more menacing than shouting. You call making unfounded suggestions about my marriage a simple conversation? You call implying that I'm having an affair with my co-star straightforward questions? Do you even hear yourself right now? I never said you were having an affair, Lorraine protested weakly. But her argument was hollow, and they both knew it. You didn't have to say it explicitly, Firth fired back immediately. That's the thing about this kind of television, isn't it? You can imply anything you want, plant any seed of doubt, cast any aspersion, and then hide behind plausible deniability when someone calls you out on it. You're not stupid, Lorraine. You knew exactly what you were doing with those questions. You knew exactly what you were suggesting. Lorraine's hands were trembling now as she gripped the edge of her desk. Right. I think we're done here. I think this interview is over. Oh? Now you want to end the interview? Firth said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Now that you're being held accountable for your behavior? Now that someone's finally pushing back against your tactics? How convenient. How very, very convenient. I don't have to sit here and be insulted on my own show, Lorraine declared, her voice high and strained, almost breaking. You don't have to sit here and be insulted? Firth repeated incredulously, shaking his head. That's absolutely brilliant. That's really quite something. You've spent the last 10 minutes insulting me, my wife, and my colleague. But the moment I defend myself, the moment I refuse to play along with your game, suddenly you're the victim. That's some impressive mental gymnastics, Lorraine. Truly impressive. Get out, Lorraine said, pointing toward the exit with a shaking hand. Get out of my studio, now. With pleasure, Firth responded icily. He began removing his microphone, his movements sharp and deliberate, making sure everyone in the studio could see exactly what he was doing. But let me say this before I go. You had an opportunity here to have a genuine conversation about art, about storytelling, about the human experience that we try to capture in film, about the themes in this project that deal with love, loss, and redemption. Instead, You chose to focus on manufactured drama and personal attacks. That says far more about you and this show than it does about me. You're so bloody sanctimonious, Lorraine spat, abandoning any pretense of civility. Standing there like you're better than everyone else, like you're above it all. I'm not better than everyone else, Firth said, tossing his microphone onto the chair with barely controlled fury. But I do know the difference between journalism and gossip-mongering. I know the difference between respectful curiosity and invasive interrogation. And I know when someone is more interested in creating controversy than fostering meaningful dialogue. Those aren't difficult distinctions to make. Oh, spare me the lecture, Lorraine said dismissively, waving her hand as if she could physically brush away his words. You actors are all the same. Every single one of you. You want the fame, you want the money, you want the attention, you want to be on magazine covers and red carpets. But the moment someone asks you a real question, the moment someone treats you like a real person instead of putting you on a pedestal, you cry foul. You can't have it both ways. A real question? Firth laughed harshly, the sound devoid of any actual humor. Is that what you think you are asking? Real questions? Let me tell you what real questions sound like, Lorraine. Real questions would be about the historical context of the film and how we tried to honor that period. About the challenges of bringing a complex character to life, the psychological preparation involved. About the collaboration between cast and crew, the creative process. About the themes we explored and what they mean in today's world. Those are real questions. What you were asking wasn't journalism. It was gossip dressed up as conversation. That's boring, Lorraine exclaimed, her voice rising to a near shout. Nobody wants to hear that pretentious rubbish. Nobody cares about your process or your creative collaboration. They want to know if you're sleeping with your co-star. They want to know if your marriage is falling apart. That's what real people care about. There's that word again, Firth said quietly, but his voice carried through the entire studio. Pretentious. Do you know what I think is pretentious, Lorraine? Acting like you're providing some kind of valuable service when all you're really doing is feeding into the worst aspects of celebrity culture. Acting like you're connecting with your audience when you're actually just reducing human beings to gossip and speculation. Pretending that invasive questions about people's personal lives constitute meaningful television. Get off my stage, Lorraine said through gritted teeth, her face now completely flushed. I'm going, Firth replied, his voice steady despite the anger radiating from every word. But here's something to think about while I do. Every guest who sits in that chair is a real person. They have families, they have feelings, they have lives outside of this studio that are complex and nuanced and private. And when you treat them like props in your little show, when you disrespect their boundaries and their dignity for the sake of ratings, you're not just being unprofessional, you're being cruel. And that cruelty doesn't become acceptable just because it's dressed up as entertainment. How dare you? Lorraine breathed, her chest heaving with emotion. How dare I? Firth's voice rose again, filling every corner of the studio. How dare you, Lorraine? How dare you invite me here under false pretenses, telling my publicist this would be a conversation about the film? How dare you ambush me with invasive questions about my personal life and my marriage? How dare you dismiss my legitimate objections as being touchy and pretentious when any reasonable person would have the same reaction? And how dare you try to play the victim when I finally stand up for myself and refuse to let you treat me like I'm here for your amusement? The tension in the studio was suffocating. Several audience members were openly crying, caught up in the raw emotion of the confrontation. Others looked angry, though it was unclear who they were angry at. The crew stood motionless, transfixed, cameras still recording every explosive second of this career-defining moment. You know what the saddest part is, Firth continued, his voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. People trust you. They invite you into their homes every morning. They watch you while they're having breakfast, getting ready for work. They think you're genuine, warm, authentic. They think you actually care about your guests and your audience. But this performance right here, this reveals who you really are when someone doesn't play along with your script, when someone doesn't give you the soundbite or the scandal you were hoping for. I've had enough of this, Lorraine declared, but her voice lacked conviction. She sounded exhausted, defeated. I'm sure you have, Firth agreed. The truth is uncomfortable, isn't it? Especially when it's being broadcast live to thousands of people. You wanted a viral moment, Lorraine. You wanted something that would get people talking. Something that would trend on social media. Well, congratulations. You've got it. But it's not the moment you were hoping for. It's not me breaking down and confessing to an affair or confirming problems in my marriage. It's me calling you out for exactly what you're doing. Are you finished? Lorraine asked coldly, her arms crossed defensively across her chest. Almost, Firth said, picking up his jacket from the back of the chair. I just want to say one more thing. To anyone watching this at home who works in media, who interviews people, who has any kind of platform, treat your guests with respect. Treat them like human beings, not like content to be mined for ratings. Ask meaningful questions. Foster genuine conversations. Learn about their work and engage with it thoughtfully. And if someone sets a boundary, respect it. Don't mock them for it. Don't belittle them for it. Don't act like they're being difficult or pretentious. Just respect it. It's not complicated. It's basic human decency. Very inspiring, Lorraine said sarcastically, but there was a tremor in her voice. Now will you please leave? One last thing, Firth added, his eyes locked on Lorraine's. You called me pretentious. You said I was disconnected from normal people. But at least I know who I am. At least I don't hide behind a manufactured persona of warmth and relatability while treating people like shit the moment the conversation doesn't go my way. At least I don't pretend to care about people while simultaneously exploiting their private lives for entertainment. And at least when I look in the mirror, I can live with what I see. That's enough, Lorraine shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. That is enough. Get out. Get out now. Yes. It is enough, Firth agreed quietly. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair with deliberate calm and turned toward the exit. The studio was completely silent except for the rustle of fabric as he put on his jacket. Then he paused and looked back at Lorraine one final time. Good luck with the rest of your show, Lorraine. I sincerely hope your next guest is more willing to play your games. I hope they're willing to compromise their dignity and their privacy for your ratings. Because that's clearly what you value most. Get out! Lorraine screamed, losing the last shred of her composure. Just get the fuck out! Firth walked toward the exit with measured steps, refusing to rush despite the chaos he was leaving behind. His posture was straight, his head held high. He had nothing to be ashamed of, and he wanted everyone to know it. The studio doors opened, and he disappeared through them without looking back. Without a second glance at the carnage behind him, the cameras captured Lorraine standing alone on the stage, her face flushed, her chest heaving with angry breaths, her hands trembling at her sides. Her carefully constructed morning show persona, the warm Scottish presenter that millions welcomed into their homes, had been shattered into a million pieces, and everyone had witnessed it. The silence that followed was deafening. Lorraine stood frozen for several long seconds, seemingly unsure how to proceed. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The audience remained motionless, afraid to make a sound, afraid to even breathe too loudly. The crew members exchanged worried glances, wondering if they should cut to commercial or keep filming this disaster as it unfolded. Finally, Lorraine seemed to remember where she was. She smoothed down her yellow blazer with shaking hands and attempted a smile that came out as more of a grimace, a twisted parody of her usual cheerful expression. Well, she said, her voice hoarse and unsteady, that certainly was unexpected. I suppose we'll take a break. But there was no recovering from what had just happened. The damage was done. The mask had slipped, and the cameras had captured every moment of it. Every angry word, every accusation, every moment of vulnerability and rage. It was all there, recorded for posterity, ready to be shared and analyzed and debated. Colin Firth walked out of that studio with his dignity intact, leaving behind a host who had finally been called out for her behavior, an audience who had witnessed something they would never forget, and footage that would be watched and rewatched millions of times in the hours and days to come.